The 1950s and 1960s are highly regarded as the golden age of auto racing, with organizations like NASCAR, the NHRA, the SCCA, IMSA, and many other racing bodies being founded around this time. It set the foundation for the way that we race today, an era built on the back of cars like the Corvette, Camaro, Mustang, and the legendary Shelby Cobra, all built with powerful V8s and no computers. Just raw power, small tires, and skilled drivers. This raw power and skill brought many legendary rivalries like Ford versus Ferrari and a myriad of others. But the Ford versus Chevrolet rivalry is obviously one of the most talked about ones that there is. But there was a legendary car that spawned from this rivalry that few people know about. Today, we are diving into the crazy story of the purpose-built 7-liter V8 powered Ford Battlebird race cars. Now, the Ford Battlebirds are based off of the Ford Thunderbird, which first rolled into production in 1955 as a two-seat luxury car to help add a sense of class and sportiness to Ford's lineup, and to be a more daily driver-friendly competitor to the Corvette. The Thunderbird was powered with the Ford Y-Block V8 of various sizes to give it that sports car feel, and it was instantly a success for Ford, even outselling the Corvette by a whopping 23-to-1 ratio in its first year. However, as the production rolled on and as Chevy began to hit their stride with the Corvette by adding a better suspension and a V8 of their own, Ford saw the writing on the wall here and knew that although the 6-cylinder Corvette wasn't much competition sales-wise for the T-Bird, that a newer V8 Corvette could potentially crush them, especially on track. And so the quest began to take the Ford Thunderbird and turn it into a purpose-built road racer. Tasked with building these new Thunderbirds was Peter DiPaolo Engineering, a race shop based out of Long Beach, California, which happened to be created and owned by, obviously, Peter DiPaolo, who had previously raced at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as well as on classic board tracks all the way back into the 20s, and he was a well-respected name in the space. DiPaolo Engineering would be subsidized by Ford Motor Company to prepare multiple T-Bird prototypes to take to the track. With the help of famous race car chassis designers Frank Coons and Jimmy Travers, they were to go ahead and design and build these new T-Bird race cars to their liking to help dominate on the racing circuit. Now, initially, Ford sent 2 T-Birds to them to be built to compete at Daytona, and they were delivered in December of 1956. These cars happened to be 2 1957 model T-Birds with consecutive VIN numbers, being 265 and 266 respectively, with 2 more cars being sent to DiPaolo afterwards. However, these next 2 cars did not have the same chronological VIN theme. Each of these T-Birds started off as a C-code V8 optioned car in colonial white, which meant a 312 cubic inch Y-block V8 and a 3-speed manual transmission. So with that all being said, we now have to go and kind of give you a quick overview of the Ford T-Birds that became the Battlebirds, since each one of them was modified in its own unique way to give varying levels of performance for different potential classes, with some cars being mild and others being absolutely wild. Now, some of the modifications that served as a baseline for all the cars included a stock car style suspension, including 2 shock absorbers per wheel, aluminum thinned drum brakes, and lightweight Halabrand magnesium wheels wrapped with Firestone racing tires. Each car obviously also had its original interior fully gutted and was replaced with a single lightweight race seat, and the stock dash cluster was replaced with a 6-gauge instrument pod. To finish off the common modifications were dual fuel tanks and an oil cooler installed near the passenger door. The racing T-Bird with the VIN number 265 was given the least amount of modifications, as it was to compete in the stock sports car racing class at Daytona Beach, which meant that the car had to stay very true to its roots. Under the hood, this car packed a built 312 cubic inch Y-block V8 that was now turned into an absolute beast of a motor, with a supercharger on it. The suspension and brakes were also modified to help it handle and stop better given the added power and weight of the blower. The second car, which was the 266 VIN number 1, is the first of the heavily modified Battlebirds. It featured again another built 312 that was now moved 6 inches back into the engine bay for better balance and fitted with mechanical fuel injection, which was also matched with a 4-speed Jaguar transmission and a Halabrand quick-change rear end. It also had its suspension and brakes heavily upgraded to compete in the class for experimental and modified sports cars. Essentially, the 265 and 266 cars were twins, except the 265 was the more natural one, and you could say the 266 car was the augmented one. Now, the third Thunderbird looked virtually identical to the second car. However, this one was given a different engine. Out came the 312, and in came a highly modified Lincoln 430 cubic inch V8 that was also prepared by Travers & Kuhn to make an estimated 400 horsepower. For these two heavily modified Thunderbirds, part of their secret sauce, so to speak, was to also go under the knife and take out weight from the steel-bodied Thunderbird to make their power-to-weight ratio that much better. Sheet metal masters Dwight Clayton and Dick Troutman used hand tools to craft lightweight aluminum panels for the doors, hood, trunk lid skin, firewalls, belly pads, headlight and taillight housings, side vent doors, and finally the passenger tonneau cover, which were all changed out and refitted to these T-Birds to improve the race weight. A beautiful head fairing was also added to help streamline the body for high-speed aero, and the windshield was replaced with race-ready plexiglass. Now, these two highly modified Battlebirds also included other chassis upgrades, such as a revised frame crossmember that was essentially just a lightweight tube, and new torque boxes that were added to account for any loss in rigidity stemming from the crossmember. And of course, they had to get the hole saw out to cut a few holes in the frame rails itself to save the car an extra couple pounds where they could. And the fourth and final Battlebird car was much like the first one. It was built to compete in the regular sports car class, so it maintained a more stock appearance, and its modified Y-block V8 was still given the very same suspension modifications as car number 1. With the 4 Battlebirds completed, they were now shipped down to Daytona Beach to run the speed trials on the beach course, plus an airport race in New Smyrna Beach. And one of these T-Birds, fitted with the supercharged 312, supposedly ran over 200 miles per hour before the engine decided that that was too much and perforated the block, which disqualified it from setting a record as it was unable to make a return pass. And with stock car driver Marvin Panch behind the wheel at the airport race in New Smyrna, the other T-Bird managed to place second right behind Carroll Shelby in the 4.9-liter Ferrari 410 Sport. With such great promise on the horizon, it seemed like the Battlebirds were about ready to embark on a racing run of a lifetime. Tragically, though, shortly following the final real test runs for the Battlebirds on track, the Automobile Manufacturers Association decreed that its members were to withdraw from all racing events in 1957, making these cars essentially obsolete and unnecessary before they ever got a chance to really experience real sustained competition. So shortly after, Ford would go ahead and sell the 2 heavily modified Battlebirds, as they were the only 2 cars that were unable to be returned to stock, and these cars would get sold into private hands. While the 2 cars that were mostly stock ended up being converted back into regular vehicles. Andy Houghton of Dearborn Steel Tubing Company had built many Ford cars in the past, and he actually was able to buy the 2 modified Battlebirds with the anticipation to continue their racing legacy. He even also bought the truck and trailer that Ford used to haul them to races. Those 2 cars were taken around the Midwest for the next few years, often leading Corvettes to the finish line when they were actually raced. See, while Ford themselves could not actually race them, that didn't mean that people stopped racing or that individual privateers couldn't race them either. The 430 cubic inch Lincoln Power Battlebird would eventually end up being destroyed, while the other 266 VIN bird would end up being sold to Ford racing legend Parnelli Jones, who would own it for several years before selling it to Gerald Popejoy in 1975. It was here where the car was on display at the 1978 CTCI convention before being put in storage all the way until 1992. The 266 Battlebird was then purchased by Robert Bo Cheadle, who had the car restored and eventually put on display at the AACA Museum in Hershey, PA. The last confirmed movement that I could find on the car was that it sold for $280,000 at the 2010 Sports and Classics of Monterey auction, marking a price on a truly historic and now one-of-one history piece in the world of automotive racing. And frankly, given other prices today, I think this car is worth a lot more than $280,000 now. The Battlebirds are another fascinating footnote in American racing history, and while their limelight may have been short, their footprint was left on the racing world, and it would help educate the next generation of performance sports cars. And if you happen to come across a replica, or maybe you're lucky enough to see the real deal, try to grasp the feel and performance ambitions behind it, and maybe contemplate what could have been if Ford had been able to continue their quest for speed in the Corvette-killing Battlebirds. Thank you all for watching another episode of our Rare Cars documentary series. If you enjoyed this video, we would greatly appreciate it if you could drop a like and also share this video with other enthusiasts. Also, please make sure that you are subscribed to the Rare Cars YouTube channel and smash that notification bell for more documentary-style videos just like this on the world's most interesting cars. Until next time, enthusiasts.